Welcome back to the Sunday Footy Show. It is now time for Inside the 10. Michael Shamus, great to see you. Brent Reid, great to see you as well. And Wade, we're making him work overtime this weekend.
Money.
Luckily, I do have some free time.
You've got some free time.
You've got to fire up here too, you know. You've got to be very controversial, please.
Too much footy IQ on this lounge at the moment.
All right, let's dive into the first topic. Topic number one, should the NRL be considering a 20-team competition? Michael, where do you stand on this one?
Look, I think it's a bit early to talk 20 teams. I think, we've seen with the Dolphins the success they've had in a couple of weeks. I think with the Dolphins, the success is going to be measured on what they do off the field as much as they do on the field, because the NRL have identified that area in Queensland as a key growth area in participation. So hopefully that translates then into talent coming through the system and playing for the Dolphins. 20 teams. I read there was a story today in the Telegraph and the Courier Mail about the NRL's expansion plans. How quickly do you think 20 teams is realistic? Because talent-wise, it seems that we're being a bit optimistic, thinking that 20 teams is going to be the answer.
Well, it's not going to happen tomorrow. I mean, it's a long-range plan, right? Nick Politis came up with the idea, and we're talking 10 years' time. It's not the next 5 years. It's maybe not the next television cycle. It's on the one after that.
They mentioned it was before the Olympics.
Brisbane Olympics. And I mean, the idea is to unlock the Pacific region, right? Because China, if you dig a bit deeper, it's all about politics in the Pacific, and the fact that they can get federal government funding out of the Pacific, out of the Australian government to fund this, to help fund this. It can bring a lot of government money into the game. And I mean, it's a great area for the game, the Pacific region. If you can unlock it and get some pathways flowing through into the NRL, you don't necessarily need 1 million players coming out of Australia. If you're unlocking the Pacific region, getting kids coming through there, that's a whole new talent pool for the game. So, we're talking 10 years' time. It's not tomorrow. It's an aspirational goal.
Because there was talk that it could be a team based out of PNG, Samoa, Tonga, but have them maybe potentially be located in Cairns.
Cairns would be the area, I think. And obviously it'd mean North Sydney potentially coming back into the comp, which I think, I know James Bracey would be happy with that, but there'd be a lot of people happy with that, the Bears.
Wade, you're on the ground. You deal with a lot of the juniors coming through. Do you think that we do have the talent that could fit those extra two teams?
Oh, listen, I love it. I love the idea of trying to grow the game. I love having lofty aspirations, and I think we should chase that for sure. The timing has been discussed, what's the timeline, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and I'm sure those discussions will be happening in the background. But I think we should always set lofty goals and chase those lofty goals to grow the game. And certainly I'm a fan of the game before I was a player of the game, and I won't be able to play forever, but I'll always be a fan of the game, and I want to see rugby league do well. I want to see it to be the number one sport in Australia. I think the administrators are right in setting lofty goals, and we should go after it.
So wait, 17 teams just come in, right? 18th team then. I know there's a 20, we're talking long-term 20, but 18, how quickly can the NRL go to 18 teams with the talent that's there right now? Because there's talk that it's 2025, and if that's the case, the NRL needs to start planning teams in the next 6 months.
Yeah, well, we saw a little bit of the struggles that Wayne Bennett had in putting together a roster for that new team. So again, it all goes into planning and the execution of when that team is to come in. You need a bit of notice, and you need to be able to get the right people in who can attract the players for starters, who can run the organisation, the business side of the thing, because you just can't have a team that goes out there and plays on the weekend. You need to have the business side of the club, shored up and make sure that's successful, so it's not, so it's feasible to continue and it doesn't drain on the other clubs or the other, parties of or the NRL. So I think it's all about who you get to do it, who runs it, the plan, the business, business plan, the players you can get into recruitment. A lot of stuff goes into it, but that's why it's so important to plan it. But we see at the Dolphins now, there's an appetite for rugby league there. It's growing. They've started the season well. Obviously, we're only 2 games in. We'll see how they get, as they go as the season tracks on. But they certainly have the right people. Someone like Wayne Bennett there steering the ship, who's seen everything in rugby league. That's the key. You need to get the right people in there doing the job correctly and to give it a chance at the start.
Do you think that if the Dolphins weren't going as well as they are this early on in the competition, we would be having this discussion?
We'd be having the discussion about 18 teams, definitely, because I think we've got to get to 18. 20. I think 25 is too early for an 18th team. I think you're looking at maybe 2027, which I think is the last year of the new broadcasting deal, but I think you need to announce it by 25 because you need to give them more time. The Dolphins only had 18 months. I reckon you need 2 years. You need to give them 2 years notice to get in the comp.
Because it seems as though at the moment, though, the 18th team, everyone's sort of accepted that that's going to be happening.
Yeah, I don't think 17's ideal long term with all the buys. But Wayne Bennett, he'll finish at the Dolphins, he'll start at the new club.
Well, I think with the 18th team, they've had the opportunity to see the issues that the Dolphins have had, like any hurdles or hiccups that they may have had. So
they need more time.
They actually start with a little bit of a head start, having an opportunity to look how they go, whatever hiccups they might have in this first year. You know, they have their foot in the door there to be able to learn from that and, you know, strike while the iron's hot.
Should they receive, if they are now a new team, after what we've seen with the Dolphins, if there is a new team, should they be given some extra salary cap room, some extra money to recruit?
I think you'll explore all options to, you know, give that new team, you know, every opportunity, you know, to do well. We need to introduce a team, and not only introduce the team, they need to be able to do well and be sustainable as well. So I think you explore, you know, every option to give that team, that new franchise, an opportunity to do well, whether it's salary cap or other opportunities. They need to be explored, and again, that's why we need the time to go through everything.
All right, well, let's move on to the Roosters. Obviously, we do know they have quite the star-studded lineup. In terms of James Tedesco, Joseph Suaalii and Joey Manu, how do they manage this roster looking forward?
It's a good headache to have. But, yeah, you're right. There's so much talk around Suaalii and where he fits into this team going forward. James Tedesco, they both come off contract now after Joseph took that option in his contract to trigger 2024. It means both Tedesco and Joseph will come off at the same time. What do you do? I don't know how gung-ho Joseph is about playing fullback, and if he's not, will he move on? I don't know him that well. But
McCormick, don't sit in the fence.
Well,
who are you getting rid of?
I've already made a call. I actually said, and this is ridiculous, I actually think that if James Tedesco is at that point of his career and the Roosters are thinking, OK, we're moving to the next generation, I'd like to see James Tedesco go back to where it started and finish his career at the Tigers and give back to the club that he left. But that's not going to happen. He's going to stay at the Roosters. Tedesco's going to stay. Manu's going to stay. And Suaalii, if he decides to stay in rugby league, he'll be at the club. They'll make it work, the Roosters.
That's the big issue for me. You've got to make sure before you make any decision that Joe's going to stay in rugby league, because he's got the British and Irish Lions coming in 25, World Cup in 27, and while ever that door's open, he's always going to consider it. So I think you need to extend Suaalii, then you work out what you do with Tedesco, because you can't afford to let Teddy go and then Suaalii goes to rugby union. Then
the argument's
always
going to be, though, with Teddy, and a lot of players, when they get to the back end of their career, regardless of how good they are, is how much do you pay them? We saw Manly, Waito's gone through it. We saw it Manly, Stewart brothers, that issue back then. Like, there's been a lot of instances where players at the back end, no matter how good they are, clubs are starting to think for the future. Like, how do you handle Tedesco? He's still one of the best players in the game.
I wouldn't be moving Tedesco from fullback as long as he wants to play fullback at the club. I think he remains there. I think Joseph has the ability to play a number of positions really well. And if he, you know, it's up to him as an individual. I don't know him as an individual, but, you know, I'd be happy to play, you know, in another position if it meant keeping the team together and having an opportunity to be successful. Even if it meant playing another position for a couple of years, I'm sure he could learn a lot from James while he's at the club with the fullback position. It's not just about the attacking side of the ball. A lot of it these days, you know, as Billy highlighted earlier, is the defensive side of the ball, and I think the Roosters will have the ability to keep him on. But yeah, I wouldn't be moving James Tedesco from fullback.
And I think that follows on from what you said earlier with Braden Trindle re-signing with the Sharks, because even though he knows that, you know, he's potentially behind a number of players there, but he wants to be at the club. So
definitely
it's managing the players as well. And
I think, you know, I'm not. Like I said, I don't know Joseph, but I think he'll be a reasonable kid and he'll weigh up his offer. The big thing for him is he's going to have a lot of options because he's such a talented player, right? And I don't, you know, for me it was easy as a kid because all I wanted to do was play rugby league, right? I just had that rugby league gene in my blood, so that's all I wanted to do. Joseph's obviously played rugby union, he's played rugby league. Maybe he didn't see himself having, you know, a 300-game career, Premiership, Origin, World Cup player. Like maybe he saw himself being a dual international who wants to dabble in union, wants to play rugby league. So he's a tremendous athlete. I think for rugby league, like hopefully the Roosters can lock him up and we keep him in our sport, you know, for as long as possible, because he's going to, you know, put bums on seats.
Oh, you timed that perfectly, right on the buzzer.
Genius.
You're good at this TV.